Hello. So we're going to cover some importation and then treatment cleanup of Mocap in this one. Okay, so what we've got is my character Greg with the meta rig inside. So he's able to be animated at this point, but he's not kind of got the full rig on, so he's not inverse kinematic. That means you have to start any kind of leg movement with the thigh and then work down. And yeah, you have to kind of move the whole skeleton to get the feet to plant on the floor as well. Anyway, this is quite a good one to do your first kind of retarget motion to, but we've got no need for him to be here in this scene, so I'm going to invisibilize him and the skeleton, and then let's go and import. So there's a key setting in here which is easy to miss, and I think it should be on by default and higher up. My file is called Walk Stumble, and I want to make sure that my armature ignores leaf bones, which won't come from Mocap systems generally, but definitely does have automatic bone orientation. Okay, and so we import, and so there's the character. Now the actor actually stood the wrong way, so I need to twizzle round. So let's have a look at the front view and keep perspective off, because you just find things get too small or too big, one or the other. Okay, so now we're still in the modelling area. Let's go to animation. Now this window here is the 3D kind of if you had all the control rig here, and it would all be getting in the way of your mesh. So here you'd be seeing mesh, but we have no mesh, so we don't really have any need for that view at the moment. So we'll go to the non-linear animation window. So ready equipped is the animation that's the Mocap results here that we can see in the dope sheet. Here is where it came from. So this came from Motive Mocap software, and it's on from the 2022 March the 24th was when it was captured. Okay, so we've gone to perspective view again, and let's just spin round, and so we can have the character generally come towards us, and let's press play and see what we got. So around about frame 200 we start the action, but look, so the first thing you'll need to do is make sure that you can see all of your Mocap. So if I put this up to 1000 frames, we're getting 120 frames a second from a Mocap, and that means that 1000 frames is going to be about 8 seconds worth or so, but that's the total, including the Tposes. Hit return, fix that up. So if we would go to the output properties, we'll see there we've got output properties of 1000 frames. We're starting at frame 1, and the frame rate is 120 a second, so about 8 seconds. So let's see what we've got. Now the dope sheet is full in both directions of motion. So if we press the home key, that brings everything into view, frame all. Now in the window here you can see that we've got a black line, but if I just start zooming in, you can see that all the keys are selected and all there. So one key per frame for home key again, up to here, which is frame 852. So last frame is 852. So let's just fix this up there. So I'm going to put 853. Sometimes you want to do put a keyframe, copy a pose over from somewhere in the animation. You want it to kind of end or go towards that, and maybe be cyclable. So just in case we were going to want to do that, you kind of end up have an extra frame afterwards. We don't actually in this. We're going to trim it down somewhat fiercely. Okay, so around about frame 200, arms go down because the hips start to go down there. So yeah, I think about frame 200. We're going to lose everything from 200 down to frame 1. So just to make it easier, while everything's still selected, I'm going to click off and just use the summary as our guide. Is that the right word? So I'm just going to drag select. Actually, no, what I want to do is make sure I don't drag off frame 0. So I'm going to keep in frame 1 here. Home key again, and then shift drag to there, and then hit the delete key. Okay, so in our summary and in our whole animation, we've got rid of the very first few frames of that started out as a key pose. Now you can see that we've still got that frame 0, actually it's frame 1, and then we go to our start of action, ostensibly at 201. Okay, so what I want to do is unfold the summary back up and just concentrate on these here. So I want to copy that key set, copy, and then here paste it in, and that's to show that it's continuous, there's no change, it's the same key all along actually. Okay, so I can delete that now, and I'm going to drag then everything back. Good old home key again, or at least I will when I've chopped off at the other end as well. So where are we going? So we want kind of about there. Knee's not quite straight. I'm going to take that back to 720. Keep it a nice round number, and then trim off this end. Just in case, I think I might have moved something about there. Yeah. Undo is definitely your friend. So I used the B key there to invoke box select, and then when you zoom out you can add in using the Shift key. It's just a problem when you get too close to, and then just delete those. So there's no need to go around and select every kind of bone channel. You can do it just by using the summary to get rid of all keys. Okay, so there's one more thing to do, which is to drag this lot over back to frame 1 as much as I can. So and then I use G key. Just it's moved just like in modelling, so you know it's you get to use the same keys, which is good because you don't have to kind of risk re-deselecting things. Back to there, and there we are. So it's trimmed down now. So now let's just have a quick look at the action. And of course, if I fold down, you can see all of the bones and start to identify individual bits. Now there's a bit of glitchy action here, but we're going to ignore that for this point of the proceedings. Okay, so I really want to play back, see what we got. Oh, I'm going to change the end point to 521. Before I do, and then so you'll notice here it starts to get a bit glitchy on the hand. That's something for a future point. Okay, so one thing to notice is the action is way slower than real speed, and I suspect, because it was recorded at 120 frames a second and not kind of matched to any particular amount of time, that the system in Blender has kind of calculated out on basis of something like 30 frames a second. So so if I dragged over and took, say, I don't know, 3 seconds to do it, it was more like 4 or 5 seconds. Let's try 2 seconds. Maybe double speed, optimised for sort of 60 frames a second. But it's definitely kind of floating, which obviously, given it acted by a human, isn't quite right. Okay, so one thing to note, if I look at, let's take Tom's spine, so the spine bone doesn't really do a whole lot. It's kind of supporting the figure. Yeah, there'll be some movement in it, some rotation. But if we look on the dope sheet, we can see that it gets a key not just for actually rotation is the only thing it can do, because it's kind of stuck to its parent element, which is hips. So the spine has X, Y and Z location keyed in, 120 frames a second for that, and in scale, but those things won't change at all. They will be completely flat and motionless. Now there's so many bones here, you can't go through and change, reduce all of the keys to like that one at the start of the animation, so you just kind of ignore it for the moment. But the keys you're looking at are the ones that apply for rotation. Okay, so if I take, let's say, rotation keys for the hips, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the graph editor, because the graph editor shows, well, not just shows, but allows us to see and limit the view to just those particular graphs. Now, I know from previous sort of messing about that this lump here belongs to the hips, and it is a green, so it's a Y coordinate on hips. And let's just see, there we are, Y coordinate on the hips. So if I turn every other key off and then just turn the Y coordinate back on, there it is. Okay, so we've got some useful information. Let's go to the rotation, because that gives us the axis, so we can see what the Y-axis is doing. Now I've got my transformation orientation set to normal. If I set it back to global, you can see that things have gone kind of square on. The character's not quite facing square on, but the coordinate system it's being asked to use is. So if I go back to normal, you've got the actual orientation of the bone, so it's easier then to see which one to change or which one's in effect at this point. So at this point, let's see what that actually is like. Oh, something else you might find useful if you go to View, Align View, and Lock to Active. Don't forget it's locked to whatever is the selected or active bone, which I'm going to make sure to choose just Tom Hips. There we go. So it's going to follow that. Now you notice there's no kind of bone to see it swinging round, so we are the camera is kind of jiggling around, the background is moving but the hips aren't. So maybe if we kept going with the whole figure, it would be a little bit clearer. Okay, so if I maybe made that as the active thing, you can see the relationship between these two heads of bones changes slightly. That's the Y-axis coordinate working there. Okay, so it's not glitchy at all. That's seems like an accurate capture, and you can see a certain amount of regular patterning. The changes are likely to be mainly because the actor is kind of going around a bit of a corner, so putting more effort into one leg than the other, and then the kind of change of action totally. The arms are raising here, so a bit less effort being transferred through the hips there. But yeah, so this is showing you how kind of rich the curves are and how cluttered, is that the right word, with keys that just aren't needed. So what you can do is actually reveal all the other keys as well, because we can do a sort of generic process on all of the keys at once. But you can see lots of them are just really flat, aren't they? They're not doing that much. So this is the one where all the character is. So we're going to want to try and maintain the effect on these keys alone. Just make sure that nothing else is on and spotted. So we've got just the hips selected. Let's turn off that one as well. And what we want to do is grab all these keys like that and do a bit of decimation. So decimation allows you to reduce the amount of keys, which will make it easier to see what's going on. There's two films. There's an amount of allowed change, and then there's a ratio to influence the curve shape the least. Now we kind of got a problem, is there's no really any curves, because curves are frames between keyframes and there aren't any. So all of the frames have keys in. So we need to kind of judge this by eye. So we're going to use the ratio format, but first I'm going to put the ghosting on. So ghosting will show you where the curve was after the decimation process has taken place. So you don't have to kind of try and remember what it looked like. So we go key, decimate ratio, and then you can see there's a slider just above, and we're using the whole width of the screen. You can do this on many more keys, many more channels of keyframe than I'm doing. And you can see that I'm now set to decimate 91%. Remember, this is just one bone's worth, and it's giving me a fair amount of control. And if you look at where the key points are now and where the curves were, we've got a few kind of outliers that they might kind of jitter a bit, but there's a fix for that. So we go key and smooth keys, which is a bit of a sledgehammer, and there we have it. So yeah, not too bad. You might find it you do overcook things a bit and you might need to rectify them, but that's pretty good, pretty useful at least for a quick bit of generic editing and removal of such a frequency of keys. Now if you go in and look at over 20 frames, there's 5 or so keys, so yeah, pretty good removal. And of course the flatter the line is, the more characterless the line is, the more it's going to decimate, because it just will. Yeah. Okay, so there are a few outliers and you can maybe grab those by hand and fix those back. Move them down just to get things back to where they should be. Something a bit strange going on there. The ghost is showing a slightly different. You get little aberrations like this where it's let's change it from a Bezier to a or keep it in Bezier and make it circular. Yeah, it's a bit better. Just grab that handle, change it a bit, and then move that one. And now, of course, once you've trimmed out a few keys, you can move them around in time as well. So you make all the progresses a little bit more even. Okay, so let's scrub past that and just see what the movement's like. Let's take off the view alignment, so a lot clear, and then we can see how the hips are moving or whether the legs move kind of strangely as a result of that. Need to do that bit again. So that looks like there has been some damage done. So you've seen the effect, and you can see the extent to which I did it was obviously overcooked. But it's also easier to see where the damage is and maybe rectify it somewhat. Okay, so Decimate keys, especially for kind of not empty, but continuous unchanging tracks like location and scale. But also you can do a certain amount of decimation. I think 50% is probably better than 90% for things moving like that. Those hips are. Okay, so major lesson there would be use a save point. So once you've topped and tailed the Tposes off, make a save, and then you can have a look at decimation and smooth keys as well. Okay, that's it for now.